Greetings! Today we're going to explore habit formation and how to harness the power of habit to develop new and desired behaviors in our lives. How do we adopt new behaviors, especially desired ones? We first need to understand how habits are formed. Every habit is part of a three-step process of a cue, a routine, and a reward. We call this the habit loop. The habit loop works something like this. My alarm goes off at 6 a.m. That is my cue. It acts like a trigger to my routine. I get up, make my bed, brush my teeth, and get dressed. My routine is the desired behavior triggered by the cue of my alarm going off. Once my routine is complete, I reward myself with a cup of coffee and a few minutes to pray and plan my day. The reward is what my brain gets out of the behavior. In this case, the coffee is something pleasurable that I denied myself until I completed my routine. It feeds my brain dopamine, reinforcing the behavior so that I'll want to do it again. The dopamine response creates a craving to repeat the behavior and get the reward. Thus, habits are powered by the brain, which wants to turn this routine into a habit. If we want to build a new habit, we need to do two things. First, we need to find a cue that triggers this new behavior. And second, we need to define a reward to reinforce it. Some typical cues would be a time, a location, a preceding event, an emotional state, or people. Some examples might be, first thing when I wake up, I make my bed. When I go to the park, I always use the walking path. Right after dinner, I walk the dog. After the kids go to bed, I read my Bible. When I'm feeling sad, I eat peanut butter. When I'm feeling happy, I clean my house. People are an important cue as well, because surrounding yourself with other people with good habits tends to rub off and help you be more consistent and accountable. When looking at rewards, it's important to note that external or physical rewards such as money, recreation, some kind of external prize or treat work well for simple rudimentary tasks, but they do not work well to motivate the adoption of creative or complex habits. Effective rewards to motivate you to engage in innovative tasks, usually work-related, are autonomy, opportunities for mastery and growth, like learning a new skill of some kind, and a sense of purpose tied to the task. Thus, external rewards work well to reinforce simple items, but complex habits must include internal or intrinsic rewards within the habit itself. Once you identify a cue and a reward, building your routine into a habit becomes more straightforward. Another trick to forming habits is called habit stacking. Look for keystone habits, that's habits that have the power to start a chain reaction, and add new habits to that routine. For example, once I have my coffee in hand, I open my planner and look at my prayer list. Then I write out my to-do list for the day. Having a solid schedule for my day has an intrinsic reward for me, gives me a sense of accomplishment, which is a dopamine trigger. I enforce that reward more by checking my email inbox for a particular daily newsletter that I enjoy reading to get my day started. Here is another example of habit stacking. My husband wants to start walking the dog. That had been our daughter's responsibility before she left for the military. He tied the new routine to the cue of dinner being over and right before another activity that he really enjoys, which is watching a certain news show. Some might call this delayed gratification, placing something you need to do right before another activity that you find rewarding. Associating the reward with the new behavior creates habit pathways in the brain. Speaking of pathways, let's take a closer look at the science behind habit formation. It takes about 2 to 3 weeks of repeating a behavior before it becomes a habit. In the case of infrequent habits, that equals about 15 to 30 occurrences. With consistency, the brain converts the sequence of actions into a routine, known as chunking. The routine is entwined in your thinking and in your behavior. Once the cue and the behavior or routine are entwined, a neural pathway has been formed in your brain. Thus, the alarm going off, brushing your teeth, making your bed, and getting a cup of coffee are all one seamless activity in your mind. The behavior becomes automatic. The routine is now a habit. Additionally, incremental changes result in larger improvement over time, so we need to avoid trying to fix all of our habits at once. Since consistency and repetition are key to rewarding the new behavior, it is better to introduce one new behavior at a time. Harnessing the habit loop can be a little more difficult if you're trying to overcome a difficult behavior. For example, at the end of the day, you reward yourself with your favorite television program after the kids are in bed. The cue, the kids going to bed, sparks the behavior, turning on the television, which is also the reward, watching the show. But what if you have built another behavior into the loop, like eating unhealthy snacks? The snacks are providing the brain more dopamine and tying the routine of watching your favorite show with getting treats. Now, as soon as the kids are in bed, your brain craves the routine, TV and cookies, and wants to make it a habit so it can keep getting dopamine. If you want to break the habit, you need to dissect the cue and the reward. So what is the best way to break a bad habit? The one thing that research shows is that bad or old habits are difficult, if not impossible, to break. The golden rule of habit change is that habits cannot be broken, only changed. Take a look at the cue and the reward of an undesirable behavior. Try to keep them the same. Instead, replace the routine. This is why people who quit smoking often gain weight. They will replace one habit with another, but the new behavior may not be as helpful. If they had analyzed their smoking patterns and looked for what comes before the cue and what comes after the reward, and replaced the routine with something else like chewing gum or doing 10 push-ups, it would have been easier to break the habit. Using our earlier example, it's okay to snack while you watch TV, but if the habit is causing problems, make a small adjustment, like having healthy options available to eat instead. You might have to take the other options out of the house. You know yourself best, which brings me to a point about willpower. You must conserve your willpower for the things you really want to do. Willpower is like a muscle. The more you practice willpower, the more willpower you gain. But it can become fatigued if you use it too much. So if your entire day is filled with having to force yourself to do difficult or unpleasant things, then the challenging thing that you really want to do, like developing a new habit, will feel impossible to accomplish. Technology has created a particularly troublesome pattern in habit formation because of the large amount of dopamine triggered by online activities like gaming, social media discussions and likes, and various forms of entertainment that flood our brains with dopamine and create strong cravings for that routine in our daily habits. Breaking free of these habits requires self-analysis. Recognize that craving or cue, and then look for opportunities to turn less useful habits into rewarding routines. This brings me to my final point. Habits are easier to change with other people. Change seems more real when we create it within a community and with the help of other people. People can help us with accountability, and we are more likely to believe that change and growth is possible when surrounded by others who are also focused on growth. People can give us tools and additional strength that we need to make that change. Here are a few resources if you are interested in learning more about how to develop new habits. Thanks for watching this presentation on harnessing the power of habit. We only get this life, so let's make our time count.